I paid for my family vacation, but my sister hid my passport. Then I locked them out of my house. I lost my passport before the family trip, and my parents said, "We do not care. The trip will be better without you." 3 days later, my sister sent me a photo of my passport. She had hidden it, so I changed the locks for when they returned. My name is Wilson. I am 32 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I have carried the weight of my family on my shoulders. Do not get me wrong, I loved my family. Or at least that is what I repeated to myself every morning when the alarm went off at 5 o'clock in the morning for my job as a civil engineer. But sometimes that love felt more like a suffocating obligation. I lived in a house that I had bought with my own hard work, thanks to a loan I was still paying off. Living with me, there were my parents, Pedro and Marcela, both 58 years old, and my younger sister, Alejandra, who is 25 years old. The property was mine, though it seemed I was the only one who remembered that. I worked at a construction company, a job that demanded long hours, endless meetings, and precise calculations to prevent bridges, buildings, or roads from collapsing. It was not an easy job, but it was enough to cover the expenses, or rather, to cover all the expenses. The mortgage, the electricity, the water, the internet that Alejandra used to film her TikTok videos, the food my mother insisted on buying from expensive brands, and even my father's whims, who from time to time wanted a good whiskey to relax. My parents claimed they were too old to work, even though at 58 years old they were in better health than many of my colleagues. And Alejandra, well, she was the family's favorite, the rising star, who according to my parents was going to become the next big influencer. I, on the other hand, was nothing more than the one who paid for absolutely everything. It was not always like this. When I was younger, my parents worked. My father was a mechanic and my mother helped out at a clothing store. But when I turned 28 and bought the house, something changed. They said they were exhausted, that they had worked enough, and that it was now my turn to pay them back for everything they had done for us. Do not misunderstand me. I am grateful for what they did when we were little, but sometimes I feel that gratitude turned into an eternal debt. And Alejandra, well, she had never worked a single day in her life. Ever since she finished high school, she decided her destiny was to become famous on social media. My parents supported her without question, convinced that it was the new trend and that she would soon become a millionaire with her videos. Meanwhile, I would get up every morning at 5 o'clock in the morning, drive an hour to the construction company, and return home exhausted, only to be met with my sister's taunts. Alejandra had a special talent for driving me crazy. Every time she saw me walk in with my hard hat under my arm and my shirt soaked in sweat, she would let out some sarcastic comment. "Look, here comes the family slave," she would say while recording a video on her phone, laughing as if she had told the most brilliant joke in the world. My parents, instead of stopping her, would laugh with her. "Oh, Alejandra, the things you say," my mother would comment while peeling an apple in the kitchen. My father would just nod with a beer in his hand, looking at me as if I was the one who did not get the joke. I swallowed my rage because what else could I do? They were my family, and this was my house. But with each passing day, that rage grew a little more inside me. Things got worse when Alejandra decided I was the perfect target for her social media pranks. At first, they were small things. She would film me while I was asleep on the couch after a long day, or blast music to wake me up and capture my reaction. But then the pranks became crueler. One night, I came home exhausted after a 12-hour shift. All I wanted was to take a shower and sleep. I got into bed and suddenly felt an unbearable itching all over my body. I shot up, scratching myself like crazy while Alejandra appeared at the door with her phone, filming me and laughing her head off. "I put itching powder in your sheets, Wilson. Look at your face, this is going to go viral." My parents were in the living room, and instead of scolding her, they laughed as if it were the funniest thing in the world. The next day, I saw the video on her TikTok with comments from strangers making fun of me. "Poor guy, it looks like his family hates him," someone wrote. He was not that far off. I tried to talk to my parents about it. I told them that Alejandra's pranks made me feel humiliated, that I worked too hard to come home and deal with that. But my mother just sighed and said, "Oh, Wilson, do not be so sensitive. She is just a girl having fun." A girl? Alejandra is 25 years old. My father, for his part, patted me on the shoulder and said, "Relax, man. Let your sister follow her dream." That dream apparently included making me the laughingstock for her followers. I was tired, but I did not want to be the bad guy in the story. I thought about kicking them out of the house, about telling them to leave and make their own way, but I could not. They were my family, and despite everything, I loved them, or at least I wanted to love them. So, I swallowed my rage once more and carried on. But deep down, something inside me was starting to break. One day, while checking my bank account, I had an idea. Maybe what we needed was a change of scenery, something that would bring us together as a family. I had saved a little extra money and thought a trip together could be the solution. I wanted us to be a real family again, like when we were kids and took trips to the countryside on weekends. So I decided to plan a vacation. I looked up destinations, compared prices, and finally booked a trip to another country. It would be 7 days at an all-inclusive resort with a beach, a pool, and unlimited food. It was expensive, but I thought it would be worth it if I could get my family to see me in a different light. I paid for everything, the flights, the hotel, even the airport transfers. When I told my parents and Alejandra, their eyes lit up. My mother almost cried with excitement, saying she had never been to such a beautiful place. My father slapped me on the back and said, "Good job, son." For a moment I felt good, as if I was finally doing something they valued. But then, as always, Alejandra had to open her mouth. "That is great, Wilson, but it would be better if it were just the three of us. You are a bit boring, are not you?" She laughed, and my parents laughed with her. I tried to take it as a joke, but her words stabbed me like a knife. "Huh, very funny," I replied, forcing a smile. Deep down, I wondered if they were actually serious. I spent the next few weeks organizing everything. I confirmed the reservations, bought travel insurance, and made sure we all had our passports ready. I kept mine in a drawer in my desk along with my important documents. Every night before bed, I would mentally run through the to-do list. I wanted everything to be perfect. I wanted this trip to be the start of something new for us. It was the day before the trip, and I was exhausted but excited. I had worked overtime to get everything ready at the construction company before I left, and that night I came home intending to pack my suitcase. I went straight to my desk to get my passport, but when I opened the drawer, it was not there. I checked again and again, took out all the papers, emptied it, but nothing. My heart started to beat faster. Where on earth was my passport? I searched the whole house. I checked my room, the living room, the kitchen, even my parents' drawers. Nothing. My parents were in the living room watching television, and Alejandra was in her room, probably filming another video. I asked them if they had seen my passport, but my mother barely looked up and said, "I do not know, Wilson. You are always losing your things." My father laughed and added, "You are a mess, son." Alejandra came out of her room with her phone in her hand and let out a little laugh. "Oops, what a shame, Wilson. Did you lose your passport? How clumsy." I tried to ignore her, but her words hurt. I spent the whole night searching, but I could not find it. The next day, the day of the trip, I was desperate. I told my parents that without my passport we could not go, that I would have to cancel everything. But instead of being worried, they laughed. "We are not staying here because of you," my father said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. My mother nodded and added, "Besides, the trip will be better without you. You are always so serious." I could not believe what I was hearing. "Seriously? Are you really saying this to me?" Alejandra, meanwhile, was packing her suitcase, humming as if nothing was wrong. "We will not miss you, Wilson. You had better stay and look after the house," she said, laughing. The three of them looked at each other and laughed as if I were the family joke. Once again, I tried to reason with them. I told them I had paid for everything, that this trip was for us to be together, but they did not care. They packed their bags, took a taxi, and left for the airport, leaving me alone in the house. I sat on the couch with my head in my hands, trying to understand how it had come to this. I felt shattered but also guilty. I had really lost my passport. It was my fault. I tried to convince myself it was because the alternative, that my family had done this to me on purpose, was too painful to consider. I spent the first 2 days of the vacation locked in the house, trying not to think about the trip. I told myself I would use the time to rest, but I could not get the image of my parents and Alejandra laughing as they got into the taxi out of my head. On the third day, while checking my phone, I saw a notification from TikTok. Alejandra had uploaded a new video. I opened it, expecting to see another one of her silly antics, but what I saw left me frozen. In the video, Alejandra was on the beach with a turquoise sea in the background. She was talking to the camera, laughing, saying she had pulled off the prank of the century. Then she held up my passport and showed it to the camera. "Look what I did," she said with a cruel smile. "I hid my brother's passport so he could not come on the trip, and it worked. Now we are here enjoying ourselves without him. Is not that great?" The video ended with her laughing and doing a ridiculous dance. I felt the blood rush to my head. I could not breathe. Not only had they left me behind, but Alejandra had planned the whole thing. And my parents knew. Were they in on it? I called my mother immediately. When she answered, her voice sounded relaxed, like she was sipping a cocktail on the beach. "Wilson, what is it? We are busy enjoying ourselves," she said. I told her about the video. I asked if she knew Alejandra had hidden my passport. Her response broke my heart. "Oh, Wilson, do not exaggerate. It is just a prank. It is not that big of a deal." I hung up without another word. In that moment, I knew I could not go on like this. They did not love me, they did not respect me, and I was sick of being their ATM. That is when I made the decision that would change everything. The first thing I did was search online for a locksmith. I did not want to waste time. I found one that worked 24/7 and called him. I need to change all the locks on my house, I told him. The man on the other end of the line, his voice tired but professional, asked if it was an emergency. Yes, I replied without hesitation. I did not give him details. He did not need them. We agreed he would come that same afternoon while the first waited. I got to work on the next step, getting my family out of my life. I went up to my parents' room. I opened their closets and started packing their things. Clothes, shoes, the expensive perfumes my mother bought with my money, my father's watches that he always claimed were collectibles. I threw everything into suitcases and bags carelessly, without any sentimentality. Every piece of clothing I folded reminded me of the times they told me I was too serious, that I did not know how to have fun, that I should relax. Every object I packed was a reminder of how they had used my hard work, without giving me an ounce of gratitude. Then I went to Alejandra's room. Her room was a disaster. Clothes thrown on the floor, makeup scattered across her desk, and a tripod with lights for filming her TikTok videos. I saw her laptop open, the screen showing her Instagram account, where she had a couple of thousand followers, but nowhere near the fame she swore she would have. I took her things with even less care. Her designer dresses, her brand-name sneakers, everything I had paid for because my parents insisted Alejandra needed to look good for her videos. While packing, I saw the case where she kept her spare phone, the one she used to film her pranks. For a moment I thought about smashing it, about throwing everything out the window, but I controlled myself. I did not want to sink to her level. This was not a prank. This was justice.
The locksmith arrived at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. He was an older man with calloused hands and an expression that said he had seen it all.
He changed the locks on the front and back doors in less than 2 hours. He gave me the new keys, and when I paid him, he looked at me with curiosity. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Everything is perfect," I replied, and for the first time in a long time, I meant it. The next 4 days were strange. The house was silent, something I was not used to. No laughter from Alejandra, no sarcastic comments, no constant noise from the television my parents left on all day. At first it felt weird, as if something was missing, but slowly I began to enjoy the peace. In the mornings I woke up without the stress of thinking about how much money I had to spend on the house. At night I could rest without fearing that Alejandra would put itching powder in my bed or record my snoring for her followers. The day arrived. It was a Saturday afternoon, and I was in the living room reading a book when I heard the sound of a taxi outside. I looked out the window and saw them, my parents and Alejandra, getting out of the taxi with their suitcases, laughing and talking as if they had had the best trip of their lives. My father was saying something about the hotel buffet. My mother was laughing, and Alejandra was looking at her phone, probably uploading a photo to Instagram. Seeing them like that, so carefree, so happy after what they had done to me, filled me with a cold rage, but I did not say anything. I just sat there waiting. They tried to open the front door, but the key did not work. I heard the sound of metal against the lock, followed by a murmur of confusion. "Pedro, what is wrong? Is not this the key?" my mother said. My father tried again, harder this time, and then started banging on the door. "Wilson, open the door, man," he yelled. I did not move. Alejandra joined in, banging even harder. "Wilson, do not be stupid. Open the door. We are tired." I let them bang for a good while. I wanted them to feel, if only a fraction of the helplessness I had felt when they left me behind. After about 15 minutes, they started shouting louder. Alejandra was on the verge of tears, saying she was exhausted, that she could not believe I could be so heartless. My parents were also yelling, calling me ungrateful, saying they could not believe I was doing this to them after everything they had done for me. Their words made me laugh, everything they had done for me, like leaving me out of a trip that I paid for. After almost 2 hours, as it was getting dark, I stood up and opened the door. The three of them stared at me with a mixture of fury and confusion. My father was the first to speak. "Wilson, what the hell is wrong with you? We have been out here for 2 hours. What is this, a joke?" My mother added, "We are exhausted. Let us in already." Alejandra, with red eyes, screamed, "You are heartless, Wilson. We just want to rest." I looked at all three of them one by one and felt a calm I had not expected. "No," I said, my voice firmer than I had ever used with them before. "You do not live here anymore." I brought out the things I had packed for them, and their faces changed instantly. "Wilson, what is this? Stop this nonsense," my mother said, but her voice was trembling. "There are your things. Get out," I said. Alejandra started screaming, saying I could not do this to them, that I had no right. My father tried to reason with me, saying I was overreacting, that the passport thing was not a big deal, but I was not listening anymore. I unleashed the rage I had stored for years. "Not a big deal?" I yelled. "I paid for that trip. I paid for this house. I paid for everything you have, and you treat me like garbage. You hid my passport. You laughed at me, and now you want me to let you in like nothing happened? It is over." My mother started to cry, saying she could not believe I was doing this, that we were family. My father tried to play the pride card, calling me ungrateful, saying they had raised me. Alejandra, between sobs, called me selfish and said I would regret it, but I felt nothing but relief. I told them to leave, that I never wanted to see them again. I closed the door in their faces as they continued to scream and plead. An hour later, the silence returned. They were gone. Days passed, and the house felt different, lighter, more my own. For the first time in years, I could breathe without feeling the weight of my family on me. I did not contact them again, and they did not try to contact me. I guess they knew I was serious this time. A few months later, I heard that my parents had to go back to work. My father was at a mechanic shop, and my mother was cleaning houses. Alejandra, the future TikTok star, was working in a clothing store, something a friend told me she hated with all her soul. They were now living in a poor neighborhood in the city, in a small apartment. I did not feel pity, I felt justice. As for me, I started living my life. I changed a few things in the house, painted the walls, bought new furniture. I started saving for myself, not for them. And although I sometimes think about the years I spent putting up with them, I have no regrets. I did what I had to do. I was finally free. It has been several months since that Saturday evening when I finally closed the front door on my own flesh and blood. Yet there are still mornings when I wake up at 5 o'clock, my heart pounding with a phantom anxiety. For a split second, I brace myself for the familiar chaos, the mocking laughter from the hallway, the blaring music designed to startle me awake, or the crushing, immediate realization that I need to work another grueling double shift just to fund someone else's ungrateful lifestyle. But then, I open my eyes, and there is only silence. At first, that silence was terrifyingly loud. When you spend your entire adult life acting as a human shield, a punching bag, and an ATM, for the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally, the sudden absence of their endless demands feels like stepping off a cliff in the dark. You simply do not know how to exist without the weight. But slowly, day by day, that silence transformed from a suffocating void into a sanctuary. It became the steady sound of my own heartbeat, the sound of a life that finally belonged to me. Looking back, the hardest part of this entire ordeal was not the act of changing the locks, nor was it the cold, mechanical process of packing their designer clothes and expensive trinkets into careless bags. The truly agonizing part was grieving the family I thought I had, or rather, the family I was so desperately trying to buy. When I booked that extravagant tropical vacation, I was not just purchasing plane tickets and hotel rooms. I was trying to purchase a fleeting moment of their genuine respect. I foolishly believed that if I just handed them paradise on a silver platter, they would finally look at me and see a son, a brother, a human being worthy of basic affection. When I could not find my passport in that desk drawer, the frantic, chest-tightening panic I felt was not just about a missing travel document. It was the visceral terror of watching my last desperate attempt at family unity slip right through my fingers. And later, when I watched Alejandra's video, seeing her laugh in those crystal-clear turquoise waters, holding the very symbol of my exclusion as a trophy while my parents happily played along, something fundamental and irreplaceable snapped inside my chest. It was not merely anger that washed over me, it was an absolute icy clarity. I finally realized that my love for them was a bottomless well, and they were perfectly content to drain it dry and then complain about the taste of the water. Society constantly conditions us to believe that blood is thicker than water, hammering into our heads the toxic narrative that we must endure any level of abuse or humiliation simply because it comes from the people who share our DNA. I swallowed that bitter lie for years. I allowed my parents to shamelessly exploit my ingrained sense of duty, and I let my sister use my sheer exhaustion as a punchline to entertain thousands of strangers. But sitting alone in that house, knowing they were drinking cocktails on my dime while celebrating my absence, I finally understood that shared blood does not entitle anyone to a lifetime of your subjugation. When I stood on the porch and told them they no longer lived here, I saw the genuine, unadulterated shock in their eyes. They had genuinely believed I was incapable of standing up for myself, mistaking my endless patience for spinelessness. Seeing their arrogant entitlement curdle into sheer panic when they realized the bank was permanently closed did not bring me a sadistic joy, but it did bring me a profound, undeniable sense of absolute justice. Now my house smells like fresh paint and the coffee I brew just for myself. I still go to my job as a civil engineer, and I still run the precise calculations to keep bridges and buildings from collapsing. But the metaphor has shifted. I am no longer holding up a crumbling, toxic family dynamic that is determined to crush me under its weight. I'm finally building a solid foundation for myself. The mortgage I pay now feels like a worthwhile investment in my own peace, rather than a monthly ransom I must pay to keep them satisfied. I do not harbor malicious thoughts about my parents cleaning houses or Alejandra working a retail job she despises. I do not check up on them, and I do not wish them ill. I simply do not wish them at all. They are living the harsh reality of the choices they made, just as I am finally living mine. Sometimes, a lingering scar still twinges when I see a happy family laughing genuinely at a restaurant, a sharp reminder of the warmth I wanted and never received. But I know with every fiber of my being that I did the right thing. I had to lock them out of my physical house so I could finally unlock the doors to my own life. I am no longer the punchline, the bank, or the afterthought. I am just Wilson. And as I sit here in my quiet, safe living room, I can honestly say that for the first time in 32 years, being just Wilson is more than enough. Stepping back from the personal emotions of the protagonist, this sequence of events leaves us with a profound look at the quiet law of cause and effect that often governs family relationships. When patience is endlessly demanded from one person while accountability is endlessly postponed for others, the imbalance slowly becomes a system. What happened in this story was not born in a single cruel prank or one moment of anger, but in years of normalized disrespect, disguised under familiar phrases like family comes first, don't be so sensitive, or you owe us for everything we've done. In many households, love quietly turns into obligation, and obligation slowly becomes exploitation. The details of Wilson's experience, paying every bill, enduring mockery, tolerating humiliation for the sake of peace, may sound extreme, yet the pattern is painfully recognizable. Society often celebrates sacrifice, especially from the most responsible member of the family, but rarely asks where the boundary lies between gratitude and lifelong servitude. When you look closely, the turning point was not the hidden passport itself. That was only the final spark. The real story is about a man who had been taught for years that endurance was the same as love. His parents and sister learned, little by little, that his patience had no limits. And when people believe there are no limits, they stop seeing the person in front of them, they only see the convenience. This is the uncomfortable truth many families avoid confronting. Harmony built on silence is not harmony at all. It is simply a fragile agreement where one person absorbs all the tension so everyone else can stay comfortable. And this is where I want to speak directly to you for a moment. Because stories like this are not only about outrage or justice, they are about courage. The courage to say enough when everyone around you insists that patience is the noble choice. The courage to recognize that setting boundaries is not cruelty. In fact, it may be the only honest way to repair the moral balance of a relationship. When Wilson locked that door, he was not destroying a family, he was finally refusing to participate in a system that had already destroyed respect. Many people fear that drawing a line will make them look cold, selfish, or ungrateful. But sometimes the harshest truth is also the healthiest one. A relationship that survives only because one person keeps sacrificing themselves is not a relationship built on love. It is built on dependence. And perhaps the deeper lesson here is that consequences, no matter how delayed, eventually arrive. When people treat kindness as weakness for long enough, the moment that kindness disappears can feel like betrayal, even though it is simply the return of balance. So here is the question that lingers after the story ends. If the people closest to you repeatedly humiliated you, used your generosity as a resource and only valued you when you were providing for them, would you still keep the door open for the sake of family, or would you finally close and choose your own peace?